Welcome back. We've been considering God's initiation of fellowshipping with man in a communicative manner, what we refer to as prayer. Remember, prayer is communication with God in worship. In the last couple of videos, we've been considering Yahweh's fellowship with Abraham. Today we consider one of the hardest passages in the scriptures, but one that reveals such great faith. Genesis chapter 2, beginning of verse 1. Now it came to pass, after these things, that God tested Abraham, and said to him, Abraham. And he said, Here I am. Then he, that is Yahweh, said, Take now your son, your only son, Isaac, whom you love, and go to the land of Moriah, and offer him there as a burnt offering on one of the mountains of which I shall tell you. So Abraham rose early in the morning, and saddled his donkey, and took 2 of his young men with him, and Isaac his son, and he split the wood for the burnt offering, and arose and went to the place of which God had told him. Then on the 3rd day Abraham lifted his eyes and saw the place afar off. And Abraham said to his young men, Stay here with the donkey, the lad and I will go yonder and worship, and we will come back to you. So Abraham took the wood of the burnt offering and laid it on Isaac his son. And he took the fire in his hand and a knife, and the 2 of them went together. But Isaac said to Abraham his father, and said, My father. And he said, Here I am, my son. Then he said, Look, the fire and the wood, but where is the lamb for a burnt offering? And Abraham said, My son, God will provide for himself the lamb for a burnt offering. So the 2 of them went together. Then they came to the place of which God had told him. And Abraham built an altar there, and placed the wood in order. And he bound Isaac his son, and laid him on the altar upon the wood. And Abraham stretched out his hand, and took the knife to slay his son. But the angel of Yahweh called to him from heaven and said, Abraham, Abraham. So he said, Here I am. And he said, Do not lay your hand on the lad, or do anything to him, for now I know that you fear God, since you have not withheld your son, your only son, from me. Then Abraham lifted his eyes and looked, and there behind him was a ram, caught in a thicket by its horns. So Abraham went and took the ram, and offered it up for a burnt offering instead of his son. And Abraham called the name of the place, Yahweh will provide. As it is said to this day, in the mount of Yahweh it shall be provided. Then the angel of Yahweh called to Abraham a second time out of heaven, and said, By myself I have sworn, says Yahweh, because you have done this thing, and not withheld your son, your only son, blessing I will bless you, and multiplying I will multiply your descendants as the stars of the heaven, and as the sand which is on the seashore. And your descendants shall possess the gate of their enemies. And in your seed all the nations of the earth shall be blessed, because you have obeyed my voice. It's easy for us to read this and miss the incredible anguish that Abraham must have felt when God first asked him to offer up his son of promise. By this point, he had already sent away Ishmael. He had grown greatly attached to Isaac, understanding that it was through Isaac that the promises of God will be fulfilled. And here was God commanding him to take this son and to offer him as a sacrifice. But note the faith of Abraham, that as he told his servants, I and my son, we will return to you. We're going to go over there and offer the sacrifice, and we will return. To Isaac, when Isaac says, Father, we have the wood and we have the fire, but where's the sacrifice? To Isaac, he says, God himself will provide the sacrifice. And then when they go on the mountain, he builds that altar and he puts the wood on it. And then he binds Isaac and lays him on the wood, on the altar. And then he lifts his hand with the knife in order to do that which God had commanded him to do, trusting all along that God would perform that which God had promised, and that even if God allowed him to go fully through with this sacrifice, that God would be able to raise him up. We read that in the book of Hebrews. But God, at the last moment, stops Abraham, provides the ram in the thicket for him to offer in Isaac's stead. And then, almost 2,000 years later, would fulfill that which he called upon Abraham to do. That God himself would sacrifice his only begotten Son for the sins of the world, which we read in John chapter 3. For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whoever believes in him should not perish, but have everlasting life. For God did not send his Son into the world to condemn the world, but that the world through him might be saved. He who believes in him is not condemned, but he who does not believe is condemned already, because he has not believed in the name of the only begotten Son of God. And this is the condemnation, that the light has come into the world, and men love darkness rather than light, because their deeds were evil. Yahweh initiates the fellowship with us in the depths of the intimacy of that fellowship, asking, as we see here, Abraham to be willing to offer up that which was the most important thing to Abraham, in the recognition that God himself was more important. O child of God, is there something that you are clinging to greater or in the stead of Yahweh himself? Is there something that you deem to be more important than the relationship that you have with God? Would be that God would not have to remove it from us, but that we would be willing to offer ourselves, as Paul states in Romans 12, as a living sacrifice, which is our reasonable act of worship. Take time today to pray. And if you haven't yet offered yourself as that living sacrifice, believing in the sacrifice of Jesus Christ, take time to do that today, and have a blessed day.